Okay, so imagine this. You're on a long journey on foot, maybe a pilgrimage, right? Something with a little more weight to it than just your average stroll. And along the way, something happens that kind of blurs the lines between the everyday world and something, well, something almost miraculous.
Yeah.
And it's in that space, those intersections that you found, these two stories, both centered around a rooster, and a pretty unbelievable turn of events.
Yeah, it's funny. You sent us those notes you'd taken while you were walking a pilgrimage route yourself, and those two legends, they really jumped out at us right away. One set in Spain along the Camino de Santiago, the other from Barcelos in Portugal. And both of them have this common thread: an innocent person, a false accusation, a cooked rooster, and then, well, a twist that really gets you thinking. So what we're hoping to do today is to kind of dig into the core of these stories, the subtle ways they differ, and ultimately see what they reveal about what it means to be human and the force of belief.
Okay, let's start with the Spanish story then, shall we? This takes place in Santo Domingo de la Calzada, and your source, vivacamino.com, sets the scene pretty vividly. We've got a German couple on pilgrimage with their son. They stop at an inn, and things go south very quickly thanks to the innkeeper's daughter and her, well, let's just say, unrequited feelings.
What's really striking here is how this small personal drama, unreturned feelings, can blow up into a massive injustice. The daughter, she's feeling rejected, so she plants a tin jug in the family stuff and then accuses the son of theft right as they're about to leave. It's a pretty stark example of how human emotions like jealousy can have, some seriously bad consequences.
Yeah, and the consequences don't get much worse. The son's accused goes to trial and is sentenced to hang. I mean, the despair his parents must have felt is almost unimaginable, and yet they keep going on their pilgrimage. There's a real powerful message there, isn't there? This commitment to their journey, even after something so horrible.
Definitely. And then their return and finding their son alive on the gallows, that's the first hint of something miraculous in this story. Now, your account mentions two possible explanations for this: the direct intervention of Santo Domingo, the town's namesake, or the sheer power of the parents' prayers. That ambiguity is pretty interesting. It leaves room for both a religious interpretation and a more universal understanding of hope and the strength of prayer when you're facing despair. It makes you think about how much we crave divine help when confronted with pure injustice, especially in the setting of a pilgrimage.
And then we have the mayor, the skeptic, who, when he hears this incredible news, responds with a very grounded, almost cynical comment. He's like, yeah, right, your son is as alive as the roasted rooster I'm about to eat for dinner. Talk about tempting fate.
Right.
Because lo and behold, the roasted rooster on his plate springs to life and starts crowing. I mean, you can't get a more in-your-face sign than that.
It's such a vivid image, almost comical. A cooked bird ready to be eaten suddenly coming back to life. It's this impossible event that really solidifies the miracle in the minds of people, and it gives us that famous saying, Santo Domingo de la Calzada, where the chicken sang after being roasted. A very concise and memorable way to sum up this extraordinary event.
So we've got a falsely accused son saved against all odds by what seems like a miracle, and a resurrected rooster to boot. Now, as you continued on your pilgrimage, you came across a very similar story in Barcelos, Portugal. This one, called The Fable of the Rooster in Portugal, has its own unique feel to it, doesn't it? It's fascinating how these themes of pilgrimage and unexpected miracles appear in different parts of the Iberian Peninsula.
It is. And while the Spanish story focuses on a family's pilgrimage, the Portuguese tale starts with a more general sense of unease in Barcelos back in the 15th century, a time with strong religious beliefs, which probably made this kind of story even more impactful. There's a terrible unsolved crime, and a poor pilgrim just passing through becomes the easy target, the scapegoat.
Talk about bad luck. This poor traveler, he's arrested and condemned to hang for something he didn't do. But unlike the son in the Spanish story, this pilgrim takes a much more active role. He demands to see the judge who sentenced him. It's a subtle but important difference between the two narratives.
Exactly. The Portuguese pilgrim doesn't just sit around waiting for his fate. He fights for his innocence and makes a public, almost defiant statement. Pointing at a cooked rooster at the judge's banquet, he declares that it will crow when he's hanged as proof of his innocence. It's a direct challenge to the injustice he's facing.
And the reaction, you guessed it, is mockery and disbelief. I mean, it does sound ridiculous, this whole cooked rooster performing a miracle on command thing. But the judge, he doesn't eat the rooster. He sets it aside. Maybe there's a sliver of doubt in his mind, or maybe he's just morbidly curious to see what happens.
That's a key detail right there. The judge not eating the roosters suggests that even with all the skepticism around, there might be a tiny acknowledgement, however unlikely, that the pilgrim could be telling the truth. So then comes the hanging. And right at that crucial moment as the pilgrim is being executed, the roasted rooster, completely defying logic, starts to crow. Can you imagine how that must have sounded to the people watching?
It must have been dead silent. The jeers replaced by stunned silence. And the judge who dismissed the pilgrim's pleas is now faced with this impossible event. It's a moment of huge realization, and luckily in this version, it leads to the pilgrim being saved just in time.
And the story doesn't stop there. The pilgrim, grateful for what he sees as divine intervention, comes back to Barcelos later and sculpts the cross of the Lord of the Rooster. He dedicates it to the Virgin Mary and St. James, who he credits with the miracle. And this cross, it still exists today in the Archaeological Museum of Barcelos, a real tangible link to this incredible 15th century tale. It really makes you think about the power of personal conviction and how sometimes the impossible can happen to reveal the truth even in seemingly ordinary settings.
So when we put these two stories side by side, the similarities are pretty amazing. We have an innocent person facing injustice, a cooked rooster miraculously coming back to life as a sign of innocence or divine intervention, and a connection to pilgrimage routes in the Iberian Peninsula.
Totally. But the differences are important too. The specific accusations, the source of the miracle, a named saint in one, maybe a more general sense of divine intervention in the other, and how the accused react. One is more passive, receiving miraculous help, while the other actively fights the injustice and predicts the impossible.
And this leads us to some of the bigger themes your source highlighted.
Right.
This idea that we're all more alike than we are different. Even though these stories come from different countries and have their own details, the core elements are really similar. The shared human experience of injustice, the desire for truth and fairness, the power of belief. These are universal across cultures and throughout time. And going back to that idea of finding the extraordinary in a long journey, we can see how these two stories, born from pilgrimages, offer unique perspectives on these universal themes.
Right. These stories tap into our deep desire to see justice win, especially when things seem impossible. They also show the huge influence of faith, whether it's faith in a specific religious figure, the power of prayer, or just the possibility of something incredible happening. And like your source suggested, maybe this faith can actually shape reality, or at least how we see events that we can't easily explain. It's interesting to think about what miracle really means here. Is it a direct act of God, a result of strong faith, or just a very unlikely event seen through a religious lens?
And the main takeaway from your source is pretty thought-provoking. The importance of focusing on our shared humanity, our similarities, as a way to connect with each other. And this idea that faith has the power to create miracles, or at least to give us hope in the darkest times.
It raises a big question about these extraordinary events. Are they only acts of a higher power in the traditional sense? Or could they also be those super improbable things that happen when human resilience, deep faith, and maybe a bit of unexplainable chance all come together? These stories don't give us easy answers, but they definitely make us consider these possibilities.
So to sum it all up, we've explored these two fascinating rooster legends, one from the well-known paths of the Spanish Camino, and the other from the historical backdrop of Portugal. Each story has its own unique characters and twists and turns, but they both share this central image of a cooked bird coming back to life as a powerful symbol of innocence proven and divine favor given.
And as your source put it so well, even though geography and culture separate these tales, the themes of facing injustice, unwavering faith, and the incredible power of belief run through both connecting them and connecting us as humans. We see those same basic human desires and hopes in these seemingly different stories. And thinking back to your own pilgrimage, I bet you heard tons of stories and legends. These rooster tales show how these narratives can stick around and resonate across time and place.
So as you continue on your own life journey and as we all navigate its ups and downs, take a moment to think about these two compelling stories. What other seemingly unrelated stories from different parts of the world and different points in history might actually share a basic human truth? And what can that tell us about our shared human experience, this complex and often surprising tapestry of belief and storytelling that ultimately connects us all? It's definitely something to well crow about.
It really is.
It really is.